Okay, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we'll be looking at the topic sword. Sword. So, what is sword? Sword is an irrational number which do not have an exact root. It is an irrational number which do not have an exact root and is usually represented using the square root symbol. So, for instance, the square root of 10 is an example of a sword. It is a sword because 12 is an irrational number which do not have an exact root. But the square root of 16 is not a sword because square root of 16 is equal to 4. It is having an exact root. So this is a sword. This is not a sword. So a sword, like I said, is an irrational number which do not have an exact root. If you look for the square root of 12, it does not have an exact root, unlike 16, whose square root is equal to 4. So a sword is an irrational number which do not have an exact root and is usually represented using the square root symbol. So this is an irrational number that does not have an exact root and is usually represented using the square root symbol. So the square root of 12 is an example of a sword. So sword, like I said, is an irrational number which do not have an exact root and is usually represented using the square root symbol. Very simple. So what we're going to look at next is the simplification of sword. How sword are simplified. So the simplification of sword is the resolution of sword into two factors. One which is a perfect square and the other which is an imperfect square. Imperfect square. So simplification of a sword entails the resolution, that is the solving, the breakdown of a sword, the breakdown of sword into two factors. So we break down the sword into two factors, one of which is a perfect square and the other an imperfect square. This is what the simplification of sword is all about. And like I said before, a sword is an irrational number which do not have an exact root and is usually represented using the square root symbol. So for example, simplify square root of 8. This is an example 1. Square root of 8 is an example of a sword. Why is it a sword? It is a sword because it is an irrational number which does not have an exact root and is carrying the square root symbol. So square root of 8 does not have an exact root and is carrying this square root symbol. So this is an example of a sword. So to simplify this sword, we are going to resolve or break down this sword, the square root of 8, into two factors, one of which will be a perfect square and the other an imperfect square. And how are we going to do this? To break down this number into a perfect square and an imperfect square, we start dividing the number. So what I'm going to do is to draw out a table, factorization table, write out it here and start dividing it until I get a perfect square. So what can go? 2 can divide 8. So 8 divided by 2 will give me 4. So 4 is an example of a perfect square because the square root of 4 is equal to 2. So the two numbers, the two factors we are going to get from here now are 4 and 2. That is 4 times 2 will give me 8. So to resolve this number, to break down this number or to simplify the square root of 8, what I'm going to have is that my square root of 8 will be equal to the square root of 4 times 2. 4 times 2 will give me 8. So this and this are the same. So having done this, the next thing is to split this expression into 2. So this will now be equal to the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. Square root of 4 times square root of 2 will give me square root of 8. So having done this, the next thing is to look for the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So this is equal to, square root of 4 is equal to 2 times square root of 2. 2 is an imperfect square. It's also a sword. So this will now be equal to 2 times square root of 2 will be 2 root square root of 2. This is the answer for this question. So Simplification of solve, like I said, is the resolution of a solve into two factors, one of which is a perfect square. So we have resolved this into two factors, one of which is a perfect square, 4 is a perfect square, 2 is an imperfect square. And how do we do this factorization? This resolution, it is by factorizing the number, dividing the number until we get a perfect square. So with the understanding of all this, let's look at another example, example 2. And example 2 is simplify the square root of 12. So square root of 12 is an example of a surd. It is a surd because it is an irrational number that does not have an exact root and is carrying the square root symbol. So like I said, to resolve this, to resolve or simplify this surd 12, what we're going to do is to start factorizing 12 until we get a perfect square. So what I'm going to do here is that I will draw out a factorization table and start dividing 12 until I get a perfect square. So this is 12. So what can go? 2 can go. 2 divided by 12, or 12 divided by 2 rather, is 6. 6 is not a perfect square, so I'll keep dividing. What can go again? 2 can go. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 is not a perfect square, so I'll keep dividing. What can go again? 3 can go. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So I will come here and group the numbers. 2 times 2. Since I'm having 2 here, that means that this is a perfect square. 2 times 2 will give me 4. And I have 3 here. 3. So 4 times 3 is equal to 12. And 4 is an example of a perfect square. Remember, the resolution of a surd, or the simplification of a surd rather, is the resolution or the breakdown of a surd into two factors, one of which is a perfect square and the other an imperfect square. So with this, I now have those two factors, 4 which is a perfect square and 3 which is an imperfect square. So I will come here, my square root of 12 now will be equal to the square root of 4 times 3. 4 times 3 will give me 12. So this and this are the same. So having done this, I will now split the expression into 2. So this will be equal to the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 3, this is an imperfect square. An imperfect square, and it's an irrational number, so it cannot be squared, and it's also a prime number, so this will be times root 3. So this will be equal to 2 root 3. So this is the answer to this question.